Everyone to Fazlifts educational series, and the first one is on protein. So today, what I'm going to cover is what is protein. Secondly, its role in the body. What does it actually do? Thirdly, how much do we need? And for that, I'm going to assume that everyone listening to this, to my content, is engaged in some form of resistance training and who has a goal to have a lean muscular physique. So they're not just sedentary people with no interest in muscle mass. Fourthly, sources of protein. Where do we find protein? And lastly, what a typical portion looks like on your plate. So alongside with some theory, we're going to cover some practical stuff as well. Now, I'm not going to use any references in this. I don't want this to be a particularly science heavy talk. This is just a basic primer on protein, and it gives you the information you need to get started on your own diet journey or add to your body of information. The whole thing should take about 10 minutes. So firstly, what is protein? Protein is largely what our bodies are made of. So around about 40% of body protein is found in the muscles. 25% is found in various organs such as the liver, the heart, kidneys, all that kind of stuff. And the rest is across the skin and the blood. So that's where all our protein is in our bodies. Now, protein is considered to be essential. Now, what that means is without ingesting it, we wouldn't survive very long. So if you didn't get sufficient amounts of protein for a long period of time, what would eventually happen is your body would start to leach protein from your muscles, and your muscles would waste away. So let's say you eat any protein for a long period of time, your muscles would slowly waste away as your body would use that protein to actually support the more essential organs like the heart. It's a lot more important than having big biceps in a starvation situation. So we must consume protein to enable us to maintain or increase our muscle mass because our body will always prioritize the internal organs before muscle, and eventually we'll just die off because we won't be able to sustain that. Now, every protein type in the body is made up of varying patterns of amino acids. So skeletal muscle, for example, is different to the protein that makes up your liver or your heart. So this is why it's important to consume a complete amino acid profile. So you have all the amino acids, the building blocks of protein to enable you to support your body and what it needs. So protein is made up of amino acids, which are smaller molecules of varying function. Now, there are 21 amino acids within the human body. There are actually 22 altogether known to man, but 21 which form the human protein in the human body. Each type of protein in the body varies in the type and patterning of amino acids which make it up. So skeletal muscle, your biceps, your quads, that is made up of a different patterning of protein than something like your liver or your heart, for example. Now, there are different types of amino acids. Firstly, we've got essential amino acids. Those are the ones that we're really mostly interested in, because without those, the protein that we ingest wouldn't really be as useful. Now, there are 9 amino acids only available via ingestion, food. These are considered to be essential. If you don't eat these, then you won't be able to get these amino acids from anywhere else. There are also non-essential amino acids. There are further 12 amino acids which can be synthesized from the rest. So if you've got a lot of essential amino acids and you're lacking some non-essential, then your body can make it up. It's quite clever in that respect. So the essential ones are really important. Then finally, we've got conditionally essential amino acids. These are also conditionally essential amino acids which are dependent on the type of bodily protein. So for example, the liver has a slightly different protein patterning than skeletal muscle. So the liver needs a slightly different sequence of amino acids to make a protein molecule, make a protein gram. And so they're conditionally essential if they're essential for certain types of muscle. All right, now let's look at calorie values. Protein is one of the 4 macronutrients, and protein has 4 calories per 1 gram. And as we've talked about, it's considered to be essential because you have to ingest it through your diet to have enough in your body. Secondly, we've got fat, which is also considered to be essential. If after a long period of not ingesting any fat, you're not going to do very well. Lots of bodily processes rely on fat that we ingest to actually function. So as a quick example of that, our hormones are very much dependent on fat intake. So fat is 9 calories per 1 gram and it's considered to be essential. Carbohydrate is the third one and it's 4 calories per 1 gram and it's non-essential. Now, that doesn't mean you shouldn't have any. What that means is if you don't eat sufficient carbohydrates, your body can make that via a process called gluconeogenesis from other macronutrients, namely protein. Finally, we've got alcohol. Alcohol is also considered to be non-essential. Some people might argue with me on that, but it's non-essential and it's 7 calories per 1 gram. So those are the 4 macronutrients. The one we're talking about today is protein. It's 4 calories per gram and it's considered to be essential. We have to have it in our diets in sufficient quantities. So the question is, what are sufficient quantities? How much protein do we need? Now, to answer that, we're going to look at it in 2 different ways. Firstly, just in terms of muscle protein synthesis. So how much protein do we need to ensure that across the course of the day, our body has sufficient amounts of, of protein circulating around to ensure that we can hold on to all our muscle or build muscle if that's what we're trying to do. So muscle protein synthesis rates. According to an aggregate of all the studies that we have on the subject of optimum protein intake to both enhance and maintain muscle, the magic number appears to be this: 1.8 grams of protein per kilo of body weight, or roughly 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. So you may have previously heard 1 gram per pound. That's not bad. It's a nice number. It's probably a little bit on the high side for a minimum, but it's a decent number. It'll cover you. So 0.8 grams of protein per pound of body weight. For a guy who weighs 200 pounds, that's 160 grams of protein. Easy. Now, the other thing we need to consider is hunger. In general, protein intake correlates negatively with hunger and positively with satiation. So what that means is, if you're on a diet and you're constantly hungry, like, all right, this diet sucks, I'm hungry all the time, odds are you're probably under eating protein. And I imagine that describes a lot of people. The moment they begin on a diet, they just get hungry. They want food. And odds are, if you're doing that, you're probably under consuming protein in your diet. Bump those protein numbers up. So you take that previous minimum of 160 grams for a 200-pound guy, you bump that up to 200 grams, to 220, to 250 even. And 250 grams of protein from whole food sources is probably going to wipe out any hunger problems. Now, you might still have a craving for, I want pizza or a burger or whatever, but in terms of actual hunger, your hunger will be far, far better on higher protein levels. So therefore, once the minimums have been met for muscle protein synthesis, it's wise to push protein up higher if hunger is an issue and push it down if you're struggling to get your food down, perhaps if you're bulking. So for example, let's say you're a high-level bodybuilder and you weigh, 300 pounds or 250 pounds. Let's say you weigh 250 pounds. And right now, because of bodybuilding law, you're eating 2 grams of protein per pound of body weight, something crazy like that, because you've been told that's what you need to do. You're on like 500 grams of protein. That's a hell of a lot of protein to eat per day. And with that sheer amount of protein, you're just not going to be that hungry. And you're probably going to end up losing weight, even though you want to gain weight. Lower your protein intake down. Raise your carbs up higher. So that will correlate very, very nicely with increased hunger if you reduce your protein intake. So where do I get protein? Now we've established what it is. How much do we need? Where do I get it? From an athletic and aesthetic point of view, we should be looking to sources of protein with a complete amino acid profile. So if you recall earlier, there are 9 essential amino acids for the preservation and building of muscles. We should aim to ingest protein which has a complete profile of aminos. Now, on a tangent there's also a good argument to be made for one particular amino acid called leucine, which should be present in every meal. If you want to research that, look for the leucine threshold hypothesis. However, that is generally seen in the highest quality protein sources. So as long as you hit those good quality protein sources in sufficient amounts, you should be okay. So in terms of what are good quality protein sources, these are some of the best ones that I would recommend: chicken, lean beef, turkey, fish, all kinds of fish, haddock, cod, all that kind of stuff, dairy, so zero fat Greek yogurt, tofu. All good examples of a complete amino acid profile. So when people say ridiculous things like peanut butter is a source of protein, no, it's not. It's a source of fat. So there are 2 requirements here. 1, that the protein has a complete amino acid profile, and 2, that it's predominantly protein. Peanut butter is not a protein source. It's predominantly fat. It has a little bit of protein in it. Same with avocado. It has a little bit of protein in it, but it's predominantly a fat source. So these are the whole protein sources which I would recommend. Now, what does a serving of protein look like? If we say, for argument's sake, just for the purpose of illustration, we say that right now, a serving for you is 30 grams. That would mean you're looking at about 100 grams of uncooked chicken or turkey, about 150 grams of uncooked weight 5% lean beef or haddock, whey protein, about a 40-gram scoop, 0% fat Greek yogurt, about 300 grams, tofu, about 400 grams of uncooked whey. That's all about a portion, about 30 grams of protein, which is not that much protein really. Now, if you're sat there thinking, wow, that's a lot of food, you've probably been under consuming protein for a long time. So you're surprised at how big an actual protein portion is. If you're sat there going, you know what, Faz, I got this in the bag, it's nice and easy. I do that. I do that easy. Then great, you're probably eating enough protein. But if you're sat there and you've previously been sedentary, you're not really used to this is all quite new to you, you might be sitting there thinking, wow, that's a lot of protein. I don't need anywhere near that much per meal. Then that probably means you've been under consuming protein. And if it's a diet that you're interested in doing, you're probably quite hungry on a diet. So if that rings a bell, up the protein intake. And in terms of how that looks throughout the day, let's have a quick talk on this before we finish. After ensuring you had a good quantity and quality of protein in the diet, the next step in importance would be to look at timing. Now, this, however, is optional, mostly for optimal performance. It's also for hunger as well, because if you're having a bolus of protein throughout the day, that is going to keep hunger at bay. But it's good for spiking muscle protein synthesis rates throughout the day, keeping you anabolic. So we know from the research that a meal which consists of at least 20 grams of protein, complete protein, with possibly 2 grams of leucine, allows us to obtain maximum muscle protein synthesis for that meal. So in a practical sense, what we should try and do is split our daily protein intake into equal amounts over 3 to 6 evenly spaced meals. That's the idea. Here's an illustration. If you've got a guy whose goal is to eat 180 grams of protein per day, he could do that in 6 meals of 30 grams of protein per meal. So that would be, say, I don't know, 6 in the morning, 9 o'clock, 12, 3, 6, and 9, 6 meals. That'd be great, be fantastic. Or if you wanted 3 meals per day, he could split it up into 3 times 60 grams meals of 60 grams of protein. So that might be a meal at, I don't know, 7 in the morning, it might be a meal at 12, then another meal at 6 o'clock. So 3 relatively evenly spaced meals, 60 grams per meal of protein. Now, in terms of which is going to be better, you're probably going to see a very, very small minor benefit to the first option, but that's very minor. You might see better hunger management from the first option, but either way, it's something to play around with. The big thing, though, is getting the right quality and quantity. The timing is very much a bonus extra if you're struggling with appetite or if you want to optimize muscle synthesis. Right, I'm going to call it there. Thank you very much. Hopefully you found it useful.